So, boys and girls, after a lot of pastoring, after a lot of chest beating out there about how the Walt Disney Company was so secure and so sure of all of its lawsuits within the federal government and against Florida itself within its own state government, well, courts out there has now come to an absolute and total conclusion after having one of their cases completely and totally thrown out by the Florida courts. Well, now they've decided to settle that federal court case that they had, that they were just so sure of winning it. They were just so confident that they were going to go out there and beat back that evil Florida governor and that evil Florida government out there, then all of those people out there, and they were going to push back against this agenda, and they were going to reclaim their complete and total monopoly and their complete and total government identity as a controlling factor over their lovely little county area down there, the former Reedy Creek Development District, which is no longer that. It is now the Central Florida Tourism District, and it is turning out much better for them. They have already saved millions of dollars of a year. Things are already flourishing in the local economy, all simply by removing Disney and all of its sweetheart deals that it was literally giving to itself because it controlled the local government, while it was supposed to be an independent thing with just a bunch of sweetheart deals for the Walt Disney Company to be able to do a lot of what they wanted. Well, guess what? Ron DeSantis, the state of Florida, and the Florida government out there have officially won against the House of Mouse, because after all that posturing and all that BS out there, they are now settling, and it's just one more loss and more egg on the face of Bob Iger and the Walt Disney Company as a whole, and it's exactly what they deserve. So let's check out this article from That Park Place and see exactly what is going on. So Disney's $1 trillion Florida mistake. Disney World abruptly settles with the Sunshine State. And this is written by WW Pro, so shout out to Pro. How many of you heard from so-called experts that Disney would absolutely win their lawsuit against Florida? How many of you heard that Disney was doing the obvious, 100% correct step of fighting Florida over DIE initiatives and state-sponsored curriculum-aided bedroom issues for small children? Well, those who told you that Disney was on the right side of history are now stuck with being on the opposite side of Disney. You see, Bob Iger's House of Mouse has agreed to settle with Florida, and it's all in Florida's favor. Oh, yes, boys and girls. They thought, forcing their agenda, they thought they were going to win on freedom of speech, that it was totally okay, that freedom of speech, they could say whatever they wanted, and that shouldn't cause them to do that, except for at the end of the day, it was Florida's to give, and it was Florida's to take away. They didn't need a reason, although they had plenty of them outside of you trying to interfere with their legislative process. They had plenty of reasons. And guess what? It was well within their rights, and all of your BS has failed miserably. And all of those simps out there for you, all of those acolytes of the cult out there in the legacy media that came out and said, oh, Disney's got this, they've got this in the bag. Yeah, where are they now? Disney agreed to drop its lawsuit against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in a major win for the new board overseeing the land encompassing Walt Disney World resorts. The settlement agreement on Wednesday includes Disney acknowledging 11th hour deals it made with the outgoing Reedy Creek Improvement District are now null and void. Oh, color us shocked there. That's right. Your little backdoor deals that you tried to pull, Disney? Yeah, they don't actually work, and you have no legal room to stand on. So guess what? Just like all of the rest of your nonsense, just like all of your virtue signaling, this was just a bunch of gaslighting, a bunch of smoke. You were trying to blow up people's butts that amounted to absolutely nothing. The state of Florida called your bluff, and you lost, Bob Iger. Walt Disney Company made these last-ditch efforts in an attempt to solidify property rights and grant the theme park additional powers as DeSantis appointed a new board to oversee the area and hold the corporation accountable to laws and taxes in Orlando. Andrew Esquire is a Florida attorney who specializes in, shout out to Legal Mindset, our boy over there. Andrew Esquire is a Florida attorney who specializes in Florida special districts such as RCID and now, of course, the CFTOD, which controls Disney property via local government powers. Mr. Esquire, Legal Mindset, has also operates a YouTube channel where he exclusively detailed how these legal conflicts between Florida and Disney would play out. Mr. Esquire has repeatedly said that this was a $1 trillion mistake by Disney and that they would eventually need to settle with Florida in a painful way. That appears to have happened. But how does it reach $1 trillion in damages for Disney? To assess that, Mr. Esquire stated repeatedly that Disney was subject to a very special benefits as a result of essentially controlling its own local government. When Disney opted to take an official counterposition to the state regarding the Parental Rights and Education bill, Disney brought extra scrutiny upon its sweetheart deal arrangement. When the deal was ended, it also brought intense inquiry into how exactly Disney had been able to essentially run a local government as if it was a wing of the company. Even CEO Bob Iger seemed to confuse that he didn't own said local government. So that's essentially what it comes down to, right? Because they're not going to get all of those sweetheart deals anymore, because they're not going to have all those great tax breaks, because they're not going to have all this first action on every single thing that came out of the former Reedy Creek Development District. That's what's going to cost them all of these trillions of dollars, because this is what they've all lost now. So it's going to be hugely difficult for all of that kind of stuff. Disney's decision to weigh on the legislation. Now Disney is subject to all the rules, regulations, impact fees, etc. that other companies face. The $1 trillion amount Disney Esquire quotes likely comes from running those increased costs at over the next 100 years with inflation considered. In other words, becoming a political entity in Florida has had a minimum 100-year impact on the Walt Disney Company. It's therefore all the more amazing how many people wanted Disney World to be politically charged in the state, especially considering that the sweetheart deal that they'd enjoyed for 50 years was able to be taken away at any time and for any reason the legislation ever see fit. This is what happened. I'll tell you why they did this. Because of ego, because of narcissism. They believed that they were untouchable. They believed that they were the Walt Disney Company. They believed that Bob Iger believed he was Bob Iger and he was invincible. But now that we've seen with the proxy battle, now that we've seen with them losing face and completely and totally losing up against the Florida government and having to admit defeat and settle with the state of Florida over this contract, over this lawsuit, well, guess what, boys and girls? It was their ego. It was their hubris. It was the pride before the fall that got them in the situation that they thought they were untouchable. And as one of the oldest stories in history goes, pride comes before the fall. And the Walt Disney Company has fallen very, very far. And now, according to Legal Mindset and his number crunching, this is going to cost them at least $1 trillion over the next 100 years. And guess what? It's exactly what they deserve. It's exactly what they both absolutely deserve. So after fighting tremendous public conviction and angry pros, Disney is now utterly surrendered. Paul Huck of the CFTO lays the agreement out as follows. The development agreement and restriction covenants previously under lawsuit are to be considered null and void. Disney will not challenge the district's view that certain comprehensive plans, land development regulations adopted in January of the previous year are invalid, recognizing the 2020 comprehensive plan as the current operative plan. So literally they have consented to everything. The district commits to reviewing and potentially amending the 2020 comprehensive plan with consultants involving Disney and other relevant parties. Both parties agree to dismiss with prejudice the claims and counterclaim in the ongoing state court lawsuit. Disney will also dismiss with prejudice a separate state court litigation regarding public records and withdraw its pending public records request. They're literally giving them everything. They are withdrawing everything. The labor services agreement between the district and Energy Service was also be amended, would expire now in 2032 rather than 2028. Disney asserts ownership of certain long-term mitigation credits, with the district agreeing not to interfere with their use. These credits stem with permits issued by multiple agencies, with Disney having funded their creation. Concerning a federal court case Disney filed, which is currently on appeal, both parties will seek to defer briefing on the appeal while negotiating a new development agreement. Both entities agree to not contest each other's actions prior to a specific date. Finally, the agreement includes mutual releases by both parties. And while it does feature concessions from both parties, ultimately it is not our belief that Disney is out of the woods yet. It seems the investigation initiated in the past, which may have revealed issues with bonds, energy, utilities, and more, all of which could impact tremendous numbers of third parties, all remain available for possible continued investigatory activity and lawsuits. So even though Disney has consented, even though the Walt Disney Company has given up and has essentially bowed down to Disney and given up all of their lawsuits and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that the state of Florida is done with the Walt Disney Company. They still have investigations that are ongoing to all kinds of other shady and potentially illegal activities that the Walt Disney Company has had ongoing with this development district for literal decades going back through history. And it's one of them situations where the investigations are not done. That's what they're going to keep going. So this might not be done just because the Walt Disney Company is kowtowing and going, look, we're sorry. We're going to quit all of this. We're going to stop all of the nonsense. Please stop investigating us. I guarantee you, after everything that Florida's been put through with the Walt Disney Company, they are not going to stop. And I am super excited to see what happens in what will end up being the next big loss for the Walt Disney Company, because trust me, this one is a huge loss for them, consenting and conceding defeat. And it's just more egg on the face of Bob Iger and the House of Mouse, and it's exactly what they deserve.